Hey, welcome back to another episode of TSP, the Scuttlebutt Podcast. It's January 2023. We're starting off the year with a bang. Before we get started here with our guest, Terry, who's one badass American. Can't wait to introduce you to him. Myself and Combat Chaps here, we'd like to thank our Patreon members. We appreciate you. We couldn't put this show together if it wasn't for your support. The money definitely helps out. If you're interested in supporting our channel, shoot us a message, hop in the links below. The links are all over the place. Join a Patreon, throw us $5 on PayPal, do whatever you got to do to help us out. We really appreciate it. And I want to give a shout out to our show sponsor, Connor Insurance Group. We appreciate you, Mr. Connor. He's here.
Thanks, Jason.
He's here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He's a combat veteran, owner of his own insurance company. He's doing a lot of great things in Middle Tennessee. If you need insurance, auto insurance, homeowners, life insurance, whatever insurance you need, he's the man for you. And
he's good at his job, and he loves veterans.
He loves veterans. And he's not just in Tennessee, so if you're in other states and you need help, look him up for sure. I'm sure he would love to help you.
Yep.
With that said, how's it going there, chaps?
It's good. I just woke up from a nap. I feel fantastic. Actually, big news. I just finished my lifeguard training yesterday. I am fully certified AED CPR on adult, child, and infant, and I can be a lifeguard. So I'll be working at the YMCA part-time, like 2 shifts a week at the Rutherford County YMCA. I'm looking very forward to it.
We know why you signed up for that.
Well, because the steam room is amazing.
No, bikinis, come on.
No. Have you seen? You probably haven't seen the clientele. No,
I have not.
Actually, it's funny, man. You mentioned that most of the clientele probably came from Dearborn, Michigan.
Oh, nice. So I'd feel like at home if I went out.
It's exactly like home.
Nice.
A lot of burqas, a lot of headgear. Yeah, it feels like I'm back in Iraq. Awesome.
Nice. Yeah. So it's a nice balmy 72-degree day here in Tennessee.
Yeah, it's nice.
I had to turn my ceiling fan on because it's a little warm in here today.
Dude, it's hot as hell in my house right now.
So today I want to introduce Mr. Terry McIntosh. So I'm going to give you a little bit about what I know about him, and we'll get into his story. He's very fascinating. He was in the Army, Green Beret, Special Forces. So our very last show was a Special Forces also. So this is Special Forces month here at TSP. We had a Lieutenant Commander, Navy SEAL officer just a couple days ago.
Yep.
He had a very great story. If you're listening to us right now, I definitely highly suggest you go back and listen to his also.
Get on Spotify, get on YouTube, check us out.
Hey, we're all over the place, man.
We're all over the place.
For what, like 9 countries, 8
9 countries, and we are the best Navy podcast of 2022. Yes, that's right.
In the world.
In the world.
Yeah, that was
why? Because we love hearing about our veterans. We love hearing their stories, because when you tell your story, you might be helping out the next veteran who's having a tough time. And so this is why we do this. This is why Commander Fleek, this is why he started this thing. Past Commander Fleek, sorry, my bad. I'm the new commander. Sorry, he was my commander for 3 years, so it's kind of I'm kind of used to saying it all the time. But this is why we do it, because we love our veterans and we want to help the next person. Your story, Terry, is probably going to help the next person that's listening to this.
Okay. 100%. Terry, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Hey, I'm hearing you guys okay, but when you start talking fast, it starts getting difficult for me to understand it. It's not coming through real clear.
Okay.
So speak to me a little bit slower, and I'll hear you better.
I'll slow it down.
Well, that may be extreme end of it.
Hey, chaps, you know you talk to them soldiers, right? You have to be slow and precise.
You got to be slow, man, because the
okay,
Army
I'll open myself up for that.
That's the grunts from the Marine Corps and the entire Army. You have to talk slow to us, or we won't understand.
So, not only Terry was Special Forces, you were the youngest or one of the youngest Special Green Berets?
Yes, actually both of those. Circumstances were kind of different back in the 60s than they are today. Yeah. And Special Forces is an all-volunteer unit, of course. But I didn't actually volunteer. I was trained as a long-range recon patrolman,
Lurps.
A Lurp. I think most people understand what that means, to work behind enemy lines, long range, long term. And Special Forces needed additional people that they didn't have. And so I was actually levied to Special Forces. And I may have been able to reject it. I don't know, because it was a voluntary unit, but I was proud, to be selected. So they selected me because I met their qualifications on paper anyway. And they needed my critical MOS at the time. So they PCS'd me. That's, of course, you understand, permanent change of station, to Special Forces, which made me as much of the unit as anyone else. I didn't go through the Q course that you hear a lot about today. In today's Special Forces, you can't even serve on a Special Forces A team without having gone through the qualification course. But things were different back in Vietnam in 68. Yeah. And so I met the physical, mental, and other qualifications that they were looking for. So they just adopted me and issued me a full-fledged Green Beret. So that made me, at 18, one of the youngest to ever serve with Special Forces.
Wow.
And there were several of us that were, included back in the war. But to the best of our knowledge, and we've done a lot of research on it and investigated other claims, but it turns out, it appears that I am the youngest Special Forces soldier to serve on an A team and earn the combat badge at age 19.
Hoorah.
Wow.
So that's my claim to fame. And
nice.
$3 will get me a cup of coffee with that.
So were you drafted or did you volunteer?
No, I was RA, regular Army volunteer. Yeah, I was 17 when I volunteered.
Wow.
And just didn't have any direction about where to go with it. I just knew there was a war going on. I was an aimless young man, with no real goals or ambitions. And I just felt like it was a patriotic thing to do. Yeah. So like so many others, I joined the Army, and I wanted to jump out of airplanes. So I went airborne, and that kind of set the stage for everything else that happened.
Sorry, I'm not going to jump out of a plane. Sorry. No offense. I will never jump out of a plane. Nope. Sorry. Not even for fun.
Well, granted, not everybody should, but yeah, it's there to be done if you like it.
I want to know, what did your mom think about you joining at 17, knowing that there's a war raging on?
Good question.
Well, she just asked me, of course, just to set the stage as far as family's concerned. I had quit school when I was 16. I had a good home environment. There was nothing wrong there, but I was just a restless kid, And so I quit school and got a job, rented an apartment at 16. So I was away from home before that.
Wow.
Then when I decided to join the Army, of course, I had to have her signature. So I asked her if she would sign for me, and she said, "Terry, are you sure this is what you want to do?" And I said, "Yes." So there we went.
Yeah.
How many years and what years did you go in?
I went in 67, stayed through 71.
Wow.
Hey, so you were there for almost the entire war.
Well, part of it anyway. The two heaviest years of combat, 68 and 69, I was there for that. Yeah.
You were there for Tet, correct?
No, it was after that major Tet that they actually needed me, and others like me. There was Special Forces did suffer casualties in Tet, and so they needed people qualified to fill those slots. So that's why they began to look outside their own on REM.
So where did you go to boot camp at?
Fort Benning, Georgia.
Oh boy.
Fort Benning. Is that
Benning School for Boys.
Yeah, really.
Is that the only boot camp that Army has?
No, they have other facilities. Yeah. I'm not sure now. Maybe Fort Leonard Wood, maybe.
Yes,
some other
actually,
but,
that's where the Motor T guys are and the MPs. Fort Jackson, South Carolina, is another recruiting spot.
Yeah,
But I could be wrong. I mean, I don't know a lot of Army guys, so I don't feel that question very often.
So after you got out of boot camp, where'd you go after boot camp?
Well, immediately after that, I was transferred to Fort Lewis, Washington for my advanced infantry training. Upon completion of those courses, I went back to Fort Benning again for Airborne Jump School. From there, I was sent overseas to Germany, where I was assigned to the 17th Infantry Long Range Patrol unit. We were a small unit, but very elite, in a lot of ways. And that actually is the forerunner of today's 75th Infantry. And when I volunteered to go to Vietnam. I didn't volunteer for Special Forces. I just volunteered to go to Vietnam because that's why I was training in the first place. And so after my tour in Nam, I had an option to extend and stay with Special Forces or to go back to my old unit, which had transferred back to the United States and reforged as Company A 75th Rangers. And I didn't want another day in Vietnam, so I opted, to go back to my old unit. So back to Fort Benning again.
How long were you in Vietnam? How long were you in Vietnam?
Just 1 year.
One year. Just 1 year. 1 year's long enough, right?
1 year's long enough. Yeah.
Terry, my uncle, he was a second lieutenant. He only spent 1 year in Vietnam. He was there 68 to 69.
I lost you there. I'm sorry.
My uncle, he was a second lieutenant. He only did 1 year as well.
Right.
He was a Signal Corps.
Okay, good. Yeah. Well, communications was one of my three primary skills.
And that's Signal Corps, correct?
Yeah. And I was qualified with the communications and the mortars. That's and thirdly, of course, as a rifleman. So I had three MOSs there. Yeah.
What was a jump school like?
Very challenging. Yeah, especially for a 17-year-old kid.
I bet.
Yeah, you get disciplined pretty quick through basic training and all of that. It was good for me though. I needed it at the time. But yeah, it was early in the morning, running 5 miles before breakfast every day. The day filled with, of course, physical exercises and jumping out of a mock tower and getting used to those sorts of things. So it was a tough training period.
Do you remember what it was like the first time you jumped out of an airplane?
Oh yeah, I remember that real well. Yeah. It was probably the easiest one because I didn't really know what to expect. After that, I knew, what to expect. So, but yeah, I remember it real well. It was very exciting. Of course, we had trained extensively and over the 3-week period. And, you just do it. You just go out the door, that chute pops open and you feel exhilarated, wow, this is crazy. This is good. And then you start getting concerned about landing, or at least I did, because that was the most dangerous part of it. Back in those days, we used the old Army T-10 parachutes, which if you're not familiar with, I'll just tell you, they're not like today's parachutes. We came in at 22 feet a second. And we had to practice the PLF, which is called a parachute landing fall. And that's to avoid breaking bones and having your hip bone run up through your nose and that sort of thing.
Oh.
So you have to land correctly. The goal is to hit, roll, come back to your feet, collapse your chute. And that's called a PLF. So with that coming in, I was worried about that on this first jump. Am I going to break my legs here, or is this going to be okay? But it turned out well, and I was very excited about it all.
How much gear did you have on?
Oh, that was just, we didn't have gear that jump. We qualified with 5 jumps, just jumping with the chutes.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Further training, down the road, we had, equipment jumps and things like that.
When you got to Vietnam, did you do any combat jumps?
I'm sorry?
Did you do any combat jumps in Vietnam?
I did 3 jumps, but they were training jumps with the local indigenous special forces there. They weren't into hot combat zones. They were training jumps. But I did earn the Vietnamese jump wings.
Wow.
So I ended up qualified in 3 countries, that being the United States, Germany, and Vietnam.
Wow.
So speaking of that, what does your fruit salad look like? What's your chest look like? What kind of awards you got on your what kind of awards you got on your uniform?
Man.
Well, I didn't hear everything you said, but yeah, I was really proud of the jump wings for sure. Yeah.
I was asking about your ribbons. Do you have any ribbons?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yep. Well, I mean, nothing, extraordinary. Just your regular military stuff, and
just your regular old Vietnam jump wings.
That's
just
regular.
Nothing out of the ordinary. Just Vietnam.
Yeah, just
jump wings.
Vietnam jump wings. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well,
not many people have that.
Yeah. The Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry, presidential unit citations, and just
wow, good job. Get a puck. Yeah. Terry, now you said you were a Lurper. How long of a hike, how long range is the long range?
Well, that can vary. Of course, in training, we would, train for just, a couple of weeks at a time, maybe at the most, but in reality on the ground, it could be extended periods of time, just depending on the mission. The A team that I ended up on in Vietnam was hosting a covert intelligence gathering operation that ran over into Cambodia. And some of those missions would run, lengthy. It just depends on what the need was.
So you were in Cambodia?
Where were you
allowed to say that? Are you allowed to say that on this radio program?
We can say anything, yeah. Project Gamma.
I was not in Cambodia.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've got a good friend named Bill Hamilton. We joke about that a lot. We were not there.
I say that to my father-in-law all the time because my father-in-law was not in Cambodia. He said that to me a million times. Man.
Yeah. Well, anyone that's interested in that can easily research Project Gamma. And Project Gamma. That was the covert operation that was hosted on our team that ran those missions into Cambodia, which was multi-natured. We had a Viet Cong and North Vietnamese Army buildup about 15 miles from our camp over inside Cambodia. And we were stationed right at the border of Cambodia, and we had about 1,000 enemy troops camped around us. And but the main body was gathering about 15 miles from us. And so part of the mission was to keep tabs on that buildup and try to subvert any plans that they had. So
how many of you were there? You said there was 1,000 enemies, but how many guys were you with?
Well, on our A team, there was Special Forces A teams usually operate on 12-man teams. Wow. The most we ever had at one time on our team was 10, I think. And that's because there was just shortage of personnel back, at that time. But we managed it, and we had, the local, what we call the civilian defense guard, the Vietnamese civilian soldiers paid for with American dollars. And I'm not sure, maybe maybe 300 of those.
So, okay. So were they, were the civilian, were they helpful to you guys, or would they try to ambush you guys like they did in like Afghanistan and Iraq? Because those was a big issue with that.
Well, you know the story. You know, there's good and bad among the mix. And the one thing that if you read about the Green Beret affair, which is another research title people can look up, you'll discover that we had a double agent working with us, and he was exposed. And when our team partners inquired of, you know, how he should be handled, and Project Gamma was working with the CIA with all of this outside of the standard military norms. And so the word they got back was to eliminate the man.
Yeah.
And so he's a double agent spy, but possibly a triple agent, but confirmed double agent that I ran ambush patrols with before we discovered all of this. And so he was eventually executed. And then word did leak out about it, and it became an international news story. And murder charges were filed against the shooter, Robert Marasco, and Colonel Rheault, who was head of Special Forces, for trying to cover it up. And but that's all available to anybody that wants to research it if they look up the Green Beret affair.
So when he was eliminated, did they just like walk up and put a bullet in the back of his head, or did they talk to him first, like, you're gonna die, you just double crossed us? So did they give him warning first?
Well, he when he first became we became suspicious. It had to do initially with an ambush patrol that I was on with him, and contact with the enemy. And he failed to engage and offered an excuse that seemed good at the time. But Robert Marasco was in charge of the Project Gamma operation, and he was suspicious of the agent. His name was Khac Chuyen. And so he made arrangements to have Chuyen and his handler, Sergeant Smith, removed from access to Project Gamma. So, and then more information came to light that identified Chuyen as a double agent. And so he was summoned back to camp under the pretense of wanting to send him out on another mission. So when he returned from Saigon to accept that mission, he was placed under arrest, and he was interrogated for several days. And there's different reports about what came out of that interrogation.
Right.
But ultimately, they didn't know what to do with him. So Marasco and another fellow soldier made a trip to visit the CIA headquarters. And so they said, well, just, get rid of him.
Right. Yeah. Take him to the train station.
You've heard the term terminate with extreme prejudice.
Yes,
you've heard
that.
Yes.
That's where this originated, actually. I think.
Wow.
So. Yeah.
Well, I was just looking it up, and there is a lot of research. There's a lot of reading. I don't want to read it all because I want to hear your story, but it's all there. What Terry is talking about. I just looked up both those things, and you can definitely do a lot of research on that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't hear everything you said, but I'm sure it was right.
No, it's just everything that you were telling us. I looked both stuff up, and it's a lot of research to be had.
It is, yeah. If you're interested in that sort of thing, there's plenty there. We've even done a documentary about it. It's on YouTube. It's called Double Agent Down, the Green Beret affair. That can be researched very easily.
Okay.
Myself and some of the team members wanted to tell our side of things. And so we did that video a few years ago.
Wow.
Interesting.
I'll have to check that out.
For sure.
Terry, so what was, you were only in Vietnam for a year. what was for our listeners who have not been, or for me because I was Iraq, or for past Commander Fleek, he was Desert Storm. What was Vietnam like for that year that you were there?
Yeah, what was it like? Well, as far as depending on where you want to go with it, as far as combat, when I was there, both 68 and 69, those were the two most bloodiest years of the conflict. So that can speak for itself, But other than that, if you're talking about emotionally, I learned a lot about myself, through that year there. And I learned my limitations and things about myself I wouldn't have ever learned otherwise, So, I didn't want to stay, and I wouldn't want anyone else to have to do it again. But in retrospect, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to be there and to serve my country that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you guys run into the Vietnamese booby traps?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, they were.
What kind did you run into?
Well, the most common, was the spikes, the bamboo spikes in the ground, where you can, basically step into a hole and run one of those up through your foot and they're poison. That was a common sort of thing. But they had different types too, you've seen some of them on TV, I'm sure, in some of the movies and things. And but that was the most common, yeah.
Those pricks.
Oh, wow. Yeah, walking point was a dangerous job in Vietnam. It is anywhere in a combat zone, but when you're in a jungle situation, which, you can't see hardly anything in front of you, it's just kind of step by step. And the point man has to be very alert, to catch those kinds of things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did a special episode back in August for Purple Heart Day, and one of our guests was a Vietnam veteran, Lurps. He's the commander at Georgia.
He's the junior vice commander in chief of the VFW. He's from Georgia.
Yes.
He's a great guy. He's going to be commander in chief in 2 years. So he's cool. He was a ranger. Wasn't he a ranger, or was he?
I don't recall. But he told a story about his unit got overran, and they were in a fight for their lives for 4 solid days.
Yeah.
And he said he has zero recollection of it. He was just in there fighting, and his brain it was so bad his brain just shut off.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Terry, what are you doing now? Where do you're in Kentucky, correct?
Right. Yes. Of course, I am basically retired, but I'm also CEO of a nonprofit international missionary agency.
What do you guys provide? What is that missionary? Is it like going to Honduras and bringing food and Bibles, or tell us about your nonprofit?
Well, we've been to different places, but the primary focus has been in Israel and Palestine among the Islamic communities, proclaiming Jesus Christ crucified on the cross as Savior.
Amen.
And if you can imagine how that is accepted, you can appreciate the fact that anybody was there doing that. But we've been doing that for the last 30 years. We've lived on the ground there for up to a year at a time. And faithful friends and ministry partners have rotated with us, to keep the ministry functioning. And we've stepped back from that now. We turned all of that over to local ministers a few years ago. But we bought a television station in Palestine, or the West Bank, depending on your politics, however you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. But we bought a television station there, and we're broadcasting the gospel 24 hours a day, every day, 7 days a week, into the Islamic communities.
Yeah, I bet they love that.
Some do. Yeah, there's been we've seen some very, really good positive changes, but we've also made some very dangerous enemies along the way too.
I can imagine.
Some of my friends have said that they thought that Vietnam kind of prepared me for the ministry work later. I don't know. but we have been falsely accused of many things and numerous threats against our lives. But the Palestinian Authority has been faithful to stand on our behalf and to provide police military protection when we needed it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. So, is there anything you can take away from your time in Vietnam?
Oh, geez. Well, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of things that, one learns from that. And as far as me personally, I guess the biggest thing that I realized was that war is way too big, much bigger than an individual soldier.
Right.
And you can't begin to take that on and cope with it all. All you can do is the best you can with what you got, where you're at, to save lives, protect the innocent, and eliminate the enemy. And so I guess in that respect, that taught me a lifelong lesson of just being focused on where I'm at and what I'm doing, and not be overwhelmed by the bigger potential issues surrounding me.
So when you came home, young Terry McIntosh, how did you cope being a civilian after what you have just seen for the last year or so? Yeah.
Well, back then we didn't talk about things like we do today. And it was all kind of internalized. I got off the airplane. My mom and sister and a couple of others picked me up, and it was, "Hello, how are you? Missed you, glad to see you." And it was, life hit you in the face again, And I accepted that. I think most of us did back then. We just didn't bring our war stories home. And I was still in the military when I came back from Nam, and I was under orders not to speak about what it was transpiring, through our work there. And so I just kind of put it all aside and started doing business as usual. And perhaps it did somehow, affect me in ways that I wasn't really aware of at the time. But I don't know what to tell you about that.
Yeah.
I went through some difficult days. Later, a few years later, I did go through some difficult days. I had a sense of, I guess the one big thing to me was I remember seeing my first dead man, enemy. And it just struck me, that just a minute ago, this man was alive and breathing. And he didn't expect to die that day. And I wondered about him, family man, somebody's son, this sort of thing. And I just watched him and looked at him laying there, and it just struck me like everything is vain. Nothing matters, Old man death has got a gravity pull on me and him and you and everybody. And no matter what happens, we're all going to end up in this same state. And it affected me for a long, long, long time, many years, I guess, that I just felt like everything was in vain, that there was really no real purpose or goal in living, period. Not that I wanted to die, of course, but that I just didn't see the value in it, because I knew that no matter what one would do, they'd end up like that soldier did. And that did affect me that way for many, many years. And until, of course, I had some changes happen in my heart, and my relationship with Jesus Christ changed all that perspective to a better one.
Amen.
Did you have a good relationship with Jesus Christ while you're in Vietnam?
I had that foxhole relationship. you know what that is, don't you? Oh, God, get me out of here. Yeah. So I did. Yeah. And I would offer up a prayer. Yeah. But that was a very selfish motivation of mine, of course, because I didn't understand spiritual things or anything of that nature, but I had a good Christian background. My mother and father were good church-going people, and we were raised in the church, so I had that to fall back on. And but immediately after getting home, feeling safe and secure, it didn't seem to have any value for me. So I pursued to make my way without the influence of Christ in my life. until I got to the point that I realized that I had to have grace.
Yeah. I know
finding grace is it's a hard thing, finding grace.
Yes.
I was without it for a little bit when I was overseas, and I finally found him again too. And I actually found him, and I want to be a part of his ministry. And I actually put in my orders for priesthood for the Episcopal Church. I don't know. I got to go talk to the bishop. I've got to go to seminary. There's a lot of discernment coming in the next 6 years, because that's probably how long it's going to take, Terry, for me.
Yeah. Well, I didn't hear everything you said, but I appreciate what you are saying. I understand you.
Are you a minister yourself?
I am ordained minister. Yes, I am. Yeah. I was ordained in 1993. Yeah.
Congratulations. Southern Baptist?
No, independent. Yeah.
Independent.
We're very,
okay.
Sure am.
Well,
I appreciate all expressions of faith. Sometimes people of faith like to argue among themselves about who's right and who's wrong. Ultimately, we're all wrong about something. And, I respect every expression of faith as long as the faith in Christ, the Son of God, crucified on the cross, raised from the dead for the remission of our sins. If you've got that, you and I are good, regardless of other differences of theology.
Wow, it sounds like the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed very well.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. You cut out.
The Nicene and the Apostles' Creed. I hear that you know them pretty well.
Oh, well, my son can recite it. I can't.
Is your son a priest?
He is a pastor. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a pastor in Texas. Yeah.
How old is he?
Well, he's just turned. In November he turned 35.
November what?
10th. November.
I'm
10th.
the 7th.
I'm sorry.
I'm November 7th.
7th.
I'm November 7th.
Okay. 35?
No, I'm 45. I'm 10 years older.
Okay.
I wish I was 30. I wish I was 35 again.
So, is that how you know Trey?
Oh, well, first of all, I knew his mother. She was a friend of ours, my wife, Susan, and I. And so, met him through her. But he has visited with us and ministered with us in Israel numerous times over a span of different years. Yeah. And just a few short years ago, he brought his family over when I was there. And I was privileged to be able to, give the family an entire tour of the country and all of that sort of thing. So Trey's a great Christian brother. He really is. Yeah. And he and his whole family are really blessed. And you may or may not be aware that, his daughter, Sarah, has had a crippling accident, but it's a temporary condition. We're believing for complete healing. And I know there's progress being made, but
yes.
Yeah. So prayers for Sarah from everybody would be appreciated, I'm sure.
Prayers for Sarah.
Yeah. I've been following on Facebook. That's how I actually found you, because they're neighbors of mine. They live around the corner down the road.
Okay. Great.
And at Thanksgiving, I drop off turkey for them. But I've been following Sarah's progress, and yes, we pray for her all the time. She's a little fighter, man.
Yeah. Her and her brother or sisters and brother, they're all just fantastic children. They really are.
Yeah. I have yet to meet them, but I would love to go there and talk to them one day.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. So before we get into your book, can we talk about what it's like being behind enemy lines by yourselves?
Okay, I caught the last part. Please repeat.
So can you just give us a story about being behind enemy lines?
Well, no, not really.
Right on.
At least he's honest.
Most of our operations were handled by the indigenous troops. It was very, very rare that any of us ever made an incursion into Cambodia itself. I know that I did one time. I know that I was in Cambodia, and you wasn't supposed to be there, but it was to extract some revenge. And well, I guess I'll tell you the story. We had been attacked, and there were several indigenous troops that had been killed. And the Viet Cong were famous, of course, for coming across the line and then withdrawing after a hit and run back across the border into Cambodia. And we weren't allowed officially, to be in there. Of course, the Project Gamma operation did. But generally, we were not allowed just to cross into Cambodia. But there was a village sitting over there inside Cambodia that we knew that's where they were coming from and withdrawing back to. And so we were out on a long range patrol a couple of weeks here, and had encountered some of them, and but that's a sidebar. But getting to the point, this one morning, I wanted to go back out and kind of scout the area around us a little more. It was just me and another American, Sergeant Eddie Hamby. We're the only Americans on the team this time. And he was going to stay with them, and I was going to go out and just kind of recon the area around us near the border. And so a couple of the indigenous troops were going to go with me. And one of them picked up the small mortar, if you're familiar with those or not, handheld, just easy to carry.
Yep.
And so we made our way through, and the next thing I know, we're looking at the village. And I didn't authorize it. I didn't say, let's do this. But they wanted to take some revenge for losing their friends just recently. And so one of them in broken English said to me, he said, we shoot VC, we wake them up. They eat breakfast, he said, they ate breakfast, they sleep, now we wake them up. And so we're over the line, and they set up the mortar, and I'm watching it. I'm complicit. I could have said, no, don't do this. And I realized what they were doing. But they started firing rounds, toward the village. And things happen sometimes in a hurry, and you're not really thinking about what you're doing sometimes. But we were doing to them what they had been doing to our cities and camps, for a long time, just dropping orders in on them. And I was watching them land, and they landed short of the village. They did. They didn't hit inside the village. And then we made a quick hurry up out of the area back across into Vietnam and to the camp. And I reported what had happened to Sergeant Hamby, who was my team leader. And he advised me, he said, if this ever comes to knowledge, he said, you don't know anything about it. So he was telling me to keep my mouth shut. And as I thought about it later, I was really glad the rounds did not hit in the village, because there are innocent people in those places too, and children, Mm-hmm. And I realized, well, we were doing the same thing to them they've been doing to us, but it just didn't feel good. And I felt very remorseful about it, because I realized that we couldn't be like them. We had to be better than they were, even in executing combat situations. Mm-hmm. So it troubled me personally. And I guess I had more remorse over that one incident where no one got hurt than I did others where people got killed. It was because I was participating in that, and I felt guilty about it. So that's my Cambodian story.
Okay. Wow.
Well, before we get on to your book, I just want to say God bless you and all your brothers that were in Vietnam. I couldn't imagine going through what you guys went through, and my hat is off to you guys.
Welcome home, Terry.
Well, thank you. And it's back to you guys too. Everybody, these things, when you're trained, you just do it. You just roll through things.
Yes.
And it's not that anyone is special or a hero of any sorts. I mean, we can attribute that word to just anybody, really, even those in the rear echelon, we can call them heroes, but it's not anything, the real heroes are those who lose their lives, lose their limbs, out there. They're the real heroes.
Yes.
The rest of us are just doing our job, and that's just part of it.
Yes. And I'll say, we always talk about this on our show. For the longest time, the report has been 22 veterans have committed suicide every single day. But it turns out that the VA did some research, and that number is not 22 at all. It's 44. And so that's when we've been doing this for about a year and a half. The reason why I started this is I figured it would help veterans to talk, get it off their system. And, me and chaps here are sponges. We sit there and take it in.
We take it in.
We hopefully it decompresses or like does something where it takes relieves
some of their pain, maybe some of their angst and anxiety.
Yeah. So if we can, if we're the cause of some young man popping that bullet out of the chamber because of us, hey, I would, I just love to think that we're out there helping out. I really do. And yes.
The importance of what you're doing can't be overstated at all. In my own experience in talking to other veterans, I realized really all you have to do, if you have a troubled veteran, is sit down and listen to him. That's it. Let him talk. Don't tell him your story. Exactly. Don't tell him what you think about his. Just listen to him. I've done this before with amazing results, and I'm not a trained professional counselor like you are. It's just a matter of caring about the person, giving them a chance to talk and to express their experiences, and it makes a large, major difference in their lives. Yes. So you are intended for it.
Thank you. So when I first came up with this idea, I asked Andrew to tag along with me because I could tell sea stories all day long.
He does. Actually, he does. He tells a lot of. I've heard every single one of his stories at least 10 times.
So my story is I was 20 years old and I sailed 4 continents. So I could talk about the sea and the ocean all day long. But my buddy here, Andrew, he's got the combat stories. So I think we work well together.
We do. Because not everyone is seeing combat, but we want to hear the stories of the combat, the operators, all those people that were, across the line. But then we also want to hear stories about people that helped those people across the line, the people in the rear. Because sometimes, we need to hear all their stories because every job is vital in the military, from the Lurper to the admin clerk to the Navy SEAL to the 75th Ranger Bat. Or 160 SOAR guy. Everyone has an important thing to do in this cog of a wheel.
Even the Air Force.
Even the Air Force. God.
Maybe not the Coast Guard, but the Air Force, yes.
Air Force, definitely. Coast Guard, hey, they're not even part of the DOD. I mean, come on.
Yeah, for every success story, or even for every failure, you've got the rear echelon that in support that has made everything happen. And they never or rarely ever get attention or thanks for the job that they do, but it's as critical as anything else.
Yeah, no, you're totally right, Terry.
Yeah, I was at an American Legion post years ago, and I was talking to this old fella, and he was telling a story of towards the end of the World War II, that him and his guys were at a gate with locks on it, and so they shot the locks off, and they went in, and there are all these emancipated people in there, and it turns out he didn't know at the time, but he was at Auschwitz.
Wow!
So he was there shooting the locks off of Auschwitz, and I hear all these stories, and I'm like, man, somebody needs to be recording these, man, because as soon as that veteran is gone, that story's gone forever too, you know?
Yep.
So it's just important. I feel like every American, and I'm not just saying this because this is my podcast, but I feel like every single American in this country needs to listen to this podcast and hear these stories.
Yep. Agreed.
I can agree with you. And it's important, like you said, for the veteran to record their story for lots of reasons. One of them is for family and friends. And that's how it started with me, because they started asking me questions eventually.
Yep.
And so I thought, well, okay, you know, we'll just put it out there for them. So that's a good reason, but it's historical too. I mean, if you don't record it, it's gone when you're gone.
Yep.
And so just for the sake of posterity, you know, I've encouraged other veterans to do it. My former team captain has written a rather successful book, and I encouraged him to do that. Al Kittredge.
What's that called?
His book is titled My War. And he's got the dates that he served in Vietnam on. It's called My War by Albert Kittredge, Kittridge. And that's on Amazon. So
okay.
I'm gonna definitely look that
up. His story is broader than mine because he served 2 tours there, and but he's done well with that book. So I was proud of him for doing that. Yeah.
If you could think of anybody that you would like to hear their story, man, you can send them our way, give them our contact information. We would love to have anybody come on and tell their story.
Sorry, guys, I didn't catch that. Somebody that I know might want to come to the story.
Yeah,
I was just saying, if you know anybody to send our way, by all means.
I'll talk to Al. Maybe he will.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'll encourage him. Yeah.
Now that's a pretty good segue into what Fleek has been trying to get onto. You wrote a book, correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's a surprising title called The Youngest Green Beret. And that's me. And
that's catchy. It's a catchy title.
Yeah. Well, the title does catch attention, and titles are important on books, you know. So The Youngest Green Beret, it is available on Amazon as a paperback and ebook. Most people read ebooks today, but you can get it in either format there. And it just basically tells my story, some of the things that we've talked about a little bit, and others, you know, pertaining to the double agent and that sort of thing.
I'm going to put that on my, how much is it, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm not sure. $12.95 maybe for the book and $4.95 for the ebook, I think.
Wow.
I'm going on after this podcast.
So buy a bunch of them.
I'm going to. I'm going to. As soon as I get off this podcast, I'm buying your book and I'm going to read it.
Before you start talking about the book, is there a way to get an autographed copy?
You know what? I can order some books and sign them.
Well,
or Fleek, we could actually take a trip up to Paducah. It's not that far away.
I didn't catch that either.
We could come up to Paducah to visit you.
You're welcome. Come on down.
Road trip.
Come on up. Another idea. Yeah. Or we could invite Mr. McIntosh to one of our VFW meetings, and he could talk to the whole group.
All right.
Would you like to do that, Terry?
I'm always open to anything I can do to contribute. So
we would love to have you at a VFW meeting of ours.
Well, it would all depend on timing and what's going on. Yeah, but
of course.
I'd be happy to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to make that happen.
Yeah,
well, thank you for the book purchase in advance.
Yeah, as soon as I get off, I'll get it.
Yeah, so we're almost at an hour, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. But let's talk about your book. What can you tell us about the book?
Well, it was like I just said. It's my own personal story, my perception about everything, the incidents that we've talked about. The Green Beret affair and Project Gamma and Cambodia. Some personal stories in there about men that I served with who were killed. there were a total of 21 men in or around our camp there that we were associated with in one way or another that were actually killed. And so it's about some of them briefly. And it talks about a brief tour that some of us did on Nui Koto Mountain. If you've ever heard of that or not, I don't know, but that was a major Viet Cong stronghold where they had hospitals, just an entire village, dug out inside the mountains, and special forces had to rout them out. It recounts personal things like me being medevaced off of Nui Koto, as a matter of fact. And it's just my story. That's it.
Awesome.
I'm looking forward to reading about it, sir.
Thank you.
We probably had like 3 or 4 authors on the show now.
Good.
Yeah, that's you're our third. You're our third author.
Well, like I said, I would encourage all of them to put it down on paper. It doesn't have to be.
Sabin?
No, fourth.
Yeah, I think 4.
It's fourth. Yeah. We're at 4. I'm sorry.
The Korean War veteran.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sabins. Lieutenant Colonel Scheller.
Mm-hmm.
Terry. And actually the Air Force guy that wrote kids' books. I don't know if that counts.
No, that counts. And then David Norland, right? So it's actually 6,
David,
right?
Yeah, there's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, we've had 6 authors on our podcast. Wow.
Well, there's a bunch of us out here. I mean, just go to Amazon and start researching books, and you'll find a whole bunch of Vietnam memoirs there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terry, I have to since you fought in that era, and I actually in high school I had to read a book called A Bright Shining Lie. Have you ever read that?
No, I rarely went to school.
Okay.
Hey, I did get my GED and eventual 2-year college associate degree. So just so you'll know. But go ahead.
In Paducah?
Yeah. No, I got my GED in the Army, in Germany before I went to the Army. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. But no, I've never read that book. No.
Okay. They made us read it, and it's like that thick.
Uh-huh.
It was very, very dry. I don't really remember too much about it, but that was the only history book of Vietnam that I ever read in high school. So I'm looking forward to reading yours.
Hey, Terry, I just want to add this. Andrew is probably one of the most accomplished jarheads I've ever met. He's got a master's degree. He's a chef. He does a little bit of everything.
It's what they call a Renaissance man.
Okay.
Now he's
you'll be proud.
Say again?
You'll be proud to know that I have a stepson that served with the Marines.
Hoorah! Good. Give him an hoorah from Corporal Farr.
All right. Okay.
Jarhead's all right.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us tonight. It's getting on to almost an hour, so we're gonna. I know you've got stuff to do in Kentucky. Which, by the way, is Paducah? Is that Central Time or is that East?
Central.
It's Central. Okay.
Central. Hey, thank you guys for the opportunity to be here, and it's a pleasure to meet you, and I admire what you're doing. So thank you.
Yes, it's definitely a pleasure. And before we sign off, I just want to let everybody know I did a football square. I sold 100 squares, $20 a piece. So $1,000 is going to go to some lucky winner. Another $1,000 is going to the nonprofit to pay for veterans to go to a sporting event. I would like to personally thank everybody that bought a square. I really appreciate it. These veterans are going to appreciate it. Terry, if you're ever in the Detroit area, we're in Nashville, but we have season tickets to the Detroit Lions. If you're ever up that way and you want to go to a football game, it would be our pleasure to send you to a football game.
All right. I'll keep that in mind. Thanks, Richard.
You just let us know.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Hey, Terry, hang on for 1 second because I just want to make sure the feed downloads. But thanks for everybody for watching, and we'll see you next Sunday.